What's up, guys? Welcome back to Callahan Media. Again, my name is Lex. Thank you guys so much again for being interested in this DC content. Definitely going to do a lot more of this on this channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the recent article with James Gunn and Variety, kind of discussing what happened with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and their profitability. He addressed a couple things about their upcoming scripts from DCU Studios. So basically, I'm just going to read through this article, give a little bit of commentary, and kind of, just kind of make sense of everything. So, starting off, let's just hop right into it, guys. So it says here, James Gunn has stressed from the minute he took over DC Studios that no superhero movie under his model should go into production without a completed script. Now, in a new interview with Rolling Stone, the filmmaker attributed the so-called dying film industry to Hollywood's fatal mistake of always making blockbusters before their scripts are officially completed. Now, that fact alone is absolutely true. A lot of the most recent films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as some of the previous DC regime studios, definitely did not have concrete storytelling elements in place. There was definitely a bunch of writing, a bunch of changes and manipulation that came that can overall be attributed to the overall lack of continuity throughout the film script and about the overall story arcs of a lot of the characters. I think that, him saying these words specifically, this has been a lot of his forefront with, the status of the DCU. He's claimed since the beginning that we're going to, discuss a couple more, exceptions to the rule. He claimed in the original, whole iteration spiel video that their main focus was making good content. So let's see what else he says on the subject. His words, I do believe that the reason why the movie industry is dying is not because of people not wanting to see movies. It's because of the home screens getting so good. The number one reason is because people are making movies without a finished screenplay, which is kind of an interesting point on his part. Gunn noted that DC Studios recently killed a project because the script just couldn't get to the right place, explaining everybody wanted to make the movie. It was greenlit, ready to go. The screenplay wasn't ready. Now, he just previously kind of went against what he just said, because why would you greenlight a movie? Everyone wants to make it. If the screenplay wasn't ready, if your entire founding argument for the new regime of your cinematic universe for the new DC Studios is to not do that. I think that it was and honestly the film, which if you guys aren't up to date in the DCUs, the film he's referring to was Sergeant Rock. Now, Sergeant Rock is kind of a lesser known DC character. He's obviously a military guy. He's just not really anyone who is reputable and who needs to be established in order for the cinematic universe to take off. Now, I will say, I'm not the most familiar with Sergeant Rock as a character, never read any of the comics, but all I can say is that if you're going to launch me and get me to continuously buy into a new group and a new band of heroes, starting with the ragtag obscure DC characters before the original Trinity or even the original Justice League members is an absolute fail. So I think that this was absolutely a good move, and I think that this was absolutely a good move as far as them not launching and souring the brand upon its release. I couldn't do a movie where the screenplay is not good. We've been really lucky so far because Supergirl's script was so fucking good off the bat. Then Lanterns came in and the script was so fucking good. Clayface, same thing, so fucking good. So we have these scripts that we've been really lucky with, or Wise and Choices, or whatever the combination is. Now, it's originally interesting because the Supergirl script was something that Gunn immediately jumped straight on. It was one of the earliest announced films in his original slate. I think that that's huge, and I think it's interesting because, with him recasting, and I don't know how much you guys know about it, so I'll go into a little bit in detail. Jason Momoa was the original Aquaman for Zack Snyder's DCU. And this new Supergirl film stars Millie Alcock as, Kara Zor-El, and she's going to be going up against Lobo, who is played by Jason Momoa. Now, this particular casting is brilliant. I'll do probably a video on Supergirl later on in this, just to get through, but I think that that's huge. And I think that if that script was so good, I mean, Gunn and, Jason Momoa have been talking about him playing Lobo for years. And, there's, if you go back, you can look through Twitter, you can see the tweets, and you can follow that entire correspondence. But I think that, Lantern's script is interesting too. I made a video on that. And I'm really hoping that it really is so fucking good, because I still have my qualms about, starting off with an older Hal Jordan and, starting off that late in the regime. I'm hoping they're not, jumping their guns and doing the whole parallax thing, because that's a whole nother things that would take, Hal Jordan off the board as a character. And then Clayface is interesting too, because Clayface just recently cast the lead, and I'm definitely going to do a video on that, because there's so many elements of that film that just are seen like it could be kind of crossing lines genre-wise. So I'll talk more on that later, but I think it's very interesting that he singled out those three scripts, and I think that honestly at this point in the DCU, Superman is not a successful film. It's very likely that these could be the only three films from the films, and shows from the cinematic universe that we see. So we're just gonna have to, take his words, at what they face value. I think that Gunn is obviously doing a lot of talking, as they're ramping up the promo for the Superman. I think that DC has a lot riding on this, so we'll keep going on this. Another thing Gunn said is that working in his favor is that there's no corporate mandate from Warner Brothers to turn out a certain number of film and television projects at DC Studios. Gunn is obviously an alum of Marvel Studios, having directed the 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies, as well as the Christmas special, which I actually enjoyed. I thought it was kind of enjoyable. I thought it was great. As well as the Guardians movies. I did enjoy those for the most part. And he noted that Disney's mandate to increase Marvel's output amid the launch of Disney Plus had a negative impact on the larger universe. Disney CEO Bob Iger has openly admitted to making this mistake. Now, for Gunn, to come out and throw shade at his old company Marvel, I think that's great. I think that, to fuel the rivalry between the two comic companies, it's just something that's going to obviously be entertaining for the fan. Could turn out to be toxic, but I think that personally I'm enjoying it. I think that there's a lot of things that can come with healthy competition, especially if we're going to talk about, an economic perspective, not even just inter-studio competition. But I think that it's really cool for him to come out and say that they definitely rushed it to keep up with the quota. And I think that it's really unique for him to take this perspective, because the fact that Warner Brothers doesn't have a quota is mainly because their profit margin and their actual finances and capital that they can use going into films is very, very, very limited, especially with the new division changes and splitting of different elements of Warner Brothers Discovery, under the direction of David Zaslav. But, I think it's cool. I think it's great. I think it's one of those things that, can ultimately build into, like I said, positive competition. But, I think that, Gunn, if he does some things right, he could definitely flip up a big-ass middle finger to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and tell them that you guys fucked up. But, we'll talk more about that a little later. We'll kind of wrap this up here. That wasn't fair, it wasn't right, and it killed them, Gunn said of Marvel. We don't have a mandated DC to have a certain amount too, so we're going to put out everything that we think is of the highest quality. We're obviously going to do some good things and some not so good things, but hopefully on average, everything would be as high quality as possible. Nothing goes before there's a screenplay that I personally am happy with. Now, one of the interesting parts of that tidbit is we're obviously going to do some good things and some not so good things. And part of me wonders what he's referring to there. I'm wondering if there's, a bunch of, controversial decisions in upcoming films, especially as far as like character points or, storyboard ideas that are probably going to cause an uproar, which knowing James Gunn, he's going to stick to his guns. See what I did there? And I think that there's definitely something really interesting to be said overall about, him overall just saying that you're going to do some not so good things up front. I think if I were trying to inspire, investor confidence and make my shareholders happy, the last thing I would do is suggest that, they're going to take some of these creative options and turn out a lackluster product. Because let's face it, guys, nobody wants to see a lackluster start to a new cinematic universe, especially with, having lost so many complete iterations with, the Snyder first being canceled previously. Most of that keep going a little bit more. And this is really interesting, too. I'll skip ahead a little bit. Batman is my biggest issue in all of DC right now, personally. Excuse me. And I'm not writing Batman, but I am working with the writer of Batman and trying to get it right, because he's incredibly important to DC as is Wonder Woman. So outside of that stuff I'm doing in the projects that are actively going, our 2 priorities are finishing up our Wonder Woman and our Batman scripts. Now, I'm really, really, really curious to see who the actual writer of the Batman script is, because as far as the state of Batman the Brave and the Bold, and I briefly alluded to this, I don't know if I actually mentioned it in the Batman Fancasting video, but Andy Muschietti is the only director who has any sort of, approached this film from a perspective of who's directing it. He's one of the only guys we've heard about, but, it's also up in limbo because obviously they do not have all of their individual things in play in order to officially submit and sign the contracts for that. So I think that it's interesting, I think it's interesting, that he's focusing on that, because it seemed like, the drop from Sergeant Rock to cut that film off and greenlight all these other things, Lanterns and Clayface and Supergirl, it seems like Batman should definitely come before a couple of those. So I'm wondering why, if that was pushed from David Zaslav down from the top about what's going on, or if that was just him literally trying to adapt to what the fans actually want, which is something that I think a lot of movie studios could do now, because they're making a lot of content that we're not particularly interested in. Batman has to have a reason for existing, right? He continued. So Batman can't just be, we're making a Batman movie because Batman is the biggest character in all of Warner Brothers, which he is. And he's also the fucking most profitable too, but that's a whole nother argument. But because there's a need for him in the DCU and a need that he's not exactly the same as Matt Reeves' Batman. But he's not yet, yet he's not a campy Batman. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in a funny, campy Batman, really. Now, this point alone is so fucking promising, because with Batman being my favorite character from DC Comics, I was very, very, very fucking afraid that he's going to go with the, you know, the light gray, the blue Adam West style, you know, kind of campy, you know, 60s set. I was really wondering what time period it's going to set in, because we haven't gotten a definitive year to kind of watermark exactly where this universe is going to be taking place in the grand history of the world's timeline. So I'm really happy to hear that. I'm really hoping, you know, that obviously Brandon Sklenar, my boy, you know, secures that casting. I think that'd be great to go along with David Corn's White Superman. So we're dealing with that. I think I have a way in, by the way. I think I really know what it's. I just am dealing with the writer to make sure we can make it a reality. Now, sounds like he's leading up to a World's Finest movie. I think that, you know, the Batman movie obviously has to establish, you know, the Bat family for that to go along properly. Especially with, like, you know, in the comics, I'm pretty sure that took place later in Batman and Superman's friendship or tenure as being heroes together. So, you know, that's just something, another tidbit, you know, keeping a scope. I'll wrap this up a little bit. He said a couple words about Wonder Woman. Gunn said developing a Wonder Woman movie is actually easier for me because there haven't been many infinite portrayals of Wonder Woman. Definitely not in movies, but really anywhere that there have been a Batman. Every single Batman story has been told, Gunn concluded. It seems like half the comics that have come out in DC over the past 30 years have Batman in them. He's the most famous superhero world and the most popular superhero in the world. Now, fuck that, alright? Every single Batman story has not been fucking told, bro. Like, what? We have gotten stories told in animated form, maybe in video game form, and not even true to the original comics. We've gotten, you know, obviously a ton of, you know, cinematic films, but we haven't gotten a lot of stories done properly in live action. We have Under the Red Hood, and I'm not sure where Batman is in his tenure. You know, Gunn has really alluded to where he wants to place Bruce Wayne in his year. I think Superman's in year 3, so I imagine Batman will be, you know, no more than 5 or 7 in, you know, at tops, because if he wants to keep him in the same age bracket. Now, I think that this is just him covering his ass to try to, you know, not step on Matt Reeves' toes with what he's going to do. I think that, you know, there's a Hush story that we haven't gotten a cinematic story. The animated film is not at all what happens in the original comic, which I've read multiple times. You know, we have a true adaptation of Dark Knight Returns, which we haven't got. You know, we got Superman fighting Batman in Snyder's movie, but we didn't get the whole mutant saga, which is kind of not what he's going to do, because that's when Bruce Wayne is 60. But I'm just, you know, iterating the point that every single Batman story hasn't been told. So, you know, I think that, you know, with all of these things being said, Gunn is obviously covering his ass, and he's trying to, you know, light a fire under the fans and kind of get them to buy into the overall hierarchy of this universe, because the ultimate goal here is simply to, you know, keep everybody occupied. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm definitely going to have more news stories and following publications, you know, regarding Gunn and the DC Cinematic Universe. Again, my name is Lex. You've been watching Callahan Media. If you guys like this video, please drop a comment, hit a like, maybe hit subscribe. And also, don't forget to turn on that bell for notifications. My next video, I think I have some spoilers for Superman that I've kind of deduced from a couple of the new trailer images. So that video will be coming out shortly. But without further ado, thank you guys so much for watching this video. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon. Good night.